In this class, we're going to look at trust in the context of e-business. Trust is generally acknowledged to be a precondition for consumer internet commerce, B2C. It's imperative that buyers and people who deal in a business context online have trust in each other and have trust in the process. If there isn't any trust, or if trust breaks down, then the whole process will break down. And it's very important in the context of e-business and e-commerce that the parties who engage in e-business online trust each other, because they don't have the same contact as we do have in traditional business. In the context of e-business, they're dealing at a distance. They're dealing with each other through the internet. It's like a proxy that comes between them. They're dealing with the website. They're dealing with software. They're dealing with networks. And through those systems, they're dealing with the person at the other end. So it's much more remote than doing business in person, when people speak to people on a telephone or go to meet each other and shake hands and do a deal. So in this context, trust is very important. Trust also plays a critical role in government to citizen, that's G to C, and in e-commerce amongst business enterprises, business to business. With e-commerce, e-commerce is just wider than e-business. That's the way it's in it. It includes services like insurance and stockbroking and so on, banking. Whereas e-business may be more to do with the promotion of a particular product and dealing with customers related to a particular product or a particular industry. But trust cuts across everything. Trust in the system. Belief in the system, belief that there is integrity in the system and that the information that's supplied is the information that will get through. Trust is essential for government to citizen. When governments pass information to us, the government wants us to receive accurate information, the information that it's sent out, that somehow the internet is not going to distort the information and we're going to get false information because of some technical glitch or because of the work of some hacker or of some intermediary, be it technical or human, who has distorted the information. And likewise, of course, in e-commerce, it's imperative that the information is not distorted, that the information is accurate and the information that's flowing around the system is accurate and represents a true and fair representation of what each of the parties meant or mean by their involvement in the business. Despite its obvious importance, trust has not been studied in the context of e-business to any great extent. That is changing. There is much more awareness now of the importance of trust in the study of e-business and e-commerce, and many more articles and papers are being put out about it, and modern day textbooks in this area tend to have chapters, at least a chapter, on the importance of trust or some sort of trust related content, so that this is being highlighted more and more in modern studies. But in the past, it was certainly something that was not given a lot of attention. The subject of trust is found in the branch of philosophy called ethics. Now, we have a separate video on just looking at some of the ideas in ethics, but the idea of trust, believing in each other and believing in the processes, that can be traced back, that belief, that the way we believe it can be traced back to the study of ethics, which has been around for, well, since philosophy came into existence back in ancient Greece. It's frequently discussed in the context of social and political processes. However, it's a fundamental requirement of economic activity. So we often talk about belief in the government. Do we believe what the government's saying? We look at ethical processes to see if they're fair and that they are reasonable and that they're going to help whoever was intended. So we tend to gauge or measure social processes and political processes in terms of the ethics, the fairness of what's been proposed. But in fact, economics is a big contender as a major player for the use of ethics, because in economics the buyer must believe the seller. They must believe that the product will do what the seller is saying. Markets can be rigged and markets can be distorted by unethical behavior. People can fix markets and thereby cheat other people. And I suppose the whole history of economics, again going back to very ancient times, but there's always been people around, unfortunately, who have tried to manipulate markets or manipulate situations to their own advantage, perhaps by lying or cheating or misrepresenting some aspect of the economic transaction. So that ethics has always been in play. Ethics is always relevant in the context of economics. That there must be a belief on the part of both sides to the agreement that the agreement is fair and accurate, but it's not based on cheating, lies or distortion. Now, in the context of market spaces, this idea of the market, wherever the market arises, be it on the internet or be it on the high street, well, the behavior of people and organizations takes place in conditions of uncertainty. Generally speaking, we face uncertainty a lot in our lives. We're not sure about what's going to happen to us later on today. We have no way of saying we're going to make it through the day. That may sound a little pessimistic, but that is true. So we work our lives as if we are going to achieve certain things in the day, and we're going to be happy and we're going to go to bed tonight. But in fact, there is a lot of uncertainty about it. A lot of situations where we can't even calculate the probability. If we could calculate the probability, we would call it risk. Risk is when we can calculate probabilities. Uncertainty, we have simply no idea. But we live our whole lives in a way that we assume the following is going to happen. We assume the situation is going to be the way we imagine. And we work on the assumption. A large number of times, of course, our assumption is based on our experience, and our experience is what's happened yesterday or last week or in our past lives. So we extrapolate our assumptions into the future and we think tomorrow will be much the same as today. If tomorrow is different, that's because of the uncertainty. One very famous economist, Friedrich von Hayek, a very famous, what's known as Austrian economist. That doesn't mean he was from Austria. It means that he was in the tradition of a type of economics that started in Austria. But Hayek was famous for saying that the future is unknowable. It's a good word. The future is unknowable. We can't say for certain what tomorrow will be, or what later on today will be, or what will happen in the next hour. It is unknowable. The further into the future we look, the more unknowable it is. And that's why, of course, people who make long-term investments are being very brave. People who buy a machine today in the anticipation of making a profit in a year's time, that's very, very brave of them, because the future is unknowable. A lot of things can happen which may alter their expectations and alter what will really come about. Considerable resources may be spent in trying to estimate the future. We're always doing it. We collect statistics and we analyze the statistics and work out trends and try to look the way the trend is moving and try to predict the future. Obviously, the further into the future we go, the more unreliable this is. But if we have a trend, we could just move the line out a couple of weeks maybe, and we can say, well, in the next couple of weeks what's going to happen is based on the trend. But really, we are making predictions that are very, they're very weak because the future is unknowable. Lots of things can happen. There could be a war. The climate could change suddenly and unexpectedly. Whatever. Things happen all the time. So when we start to look at models that take us into the future, it becomes very suspect. Risk arises when one party is dependent on the behavior of another. So risk, we normally have interrelationships between people or between machines, when one machine is dependent on another machine's output or whatever. But always the theme with risk is we have a probability. We have some idea of what's likely to happen. And the probabilities, of course, are based on past experience, which we're assuming will continue into the future, which again is not always the case. Now, to distinguish risk from uncertainty, finally, risk, some idea of probability of the outcome. So we have some idea of probability. We say it's likely to be the case that this will happen, or it's unlikely to be the case it will happen. We have some idea of probability. Uncertainty, we have no idea. We simply have no idea what's going to happen. It may happen, it may not happen. We don't know. We have no idea. So we have now distinguished the ideas of risk from uncertainty. Now, these risks may be managed in various ways, such as through warranties and insurance, but it's unusual for the risks to be entirely covered. So sometimes when we have a risk, we may be able to take out an insurance policy against something happening, but if it does happen, we'll be compensated because we've paid for the insurance. That's why we have insurance, to try and get rid of the risk. Each party has little option but to tolerate the residual risk inherent in the transaction. Generally speaking, we never cover entirely the full risk. Certainly we can't make a profit out of insurance. That's a principle of insurance. So if I go and insure my car that's worth whatever, £5,000 or whatever it is, if I insure my car for £500,000, then if I did crash it, I would get 5,000. I wouldn't get £500,000. It can't be profitable for me to try to write off my car in an accident or crash it or whatever. So, generally speaking, insurance companies will pay a reasonable price given the market condition of the asset that was destroyed. Or if I hurt myself, they will make a decision about the amount of medical care I require. It's not like I'm going to be paid perhaps millions just because I had the accident. The notion of trust involves having confidence in the other parties, and hence having an expectation that the risks will not result in loss. So that's the whole idea of trust, that when we take a risk, for example, I buy something online, I buy a product online, I'm taking a risk. I'm taking a risk it could get lost in the post. I'm taking a risk that the person at the other end doesn't cheat me. I'm taking lots of risks. So if I buy online, I need to have confidence that I will receive the product, that I have trust that the other person I'm buying for somewhere on the internet, that person is honourable and will live up to his or her side of the deal. But I've also got trust in the postal system, that the product will arrive. I trust. I have to trust, otherwise the whole system will break down. If I don't trust the postal system, I'm not going to, or the delivery system, I'm not going to place the order. I'm not going to get the product. Likewise, if I don't trust the people I'm dealing with, I'm not going to place the order. So trust is based on this idea of belief that what I expected to happen will happen. Trust is confident reliance by one party about the behavior of other parties. That's what trust is. It's a confident reliance. We believe that the other party will live up to their commitment. The delivery people, in the context of my little example earlier, the delivery people will live up to their requirements, that they will actually deliver the product to me. So I trust. The concept of trust originates in family and social settings. Like a lot of our ways of living and our norms, how we expect and what we believe, they all originate somewhere deep into the past in families and social settings. We started to trust other people, albeit these people were in our families, but we trusted that they would go out and bring back food and feed the family. We trusted that the family would somehow hang together and support each other in times of rough times. Whenever they were faced with some adversity, the family would pull together. So the concept of trust was sort of rooted in childhood and rooted on this idea of support from others. So trust is associated with cultural affinities and interdependencies. That's the origins of trust. It's to do with not just families, but wider communities who are held together by some common theme or set of values. Now, these common set of values could be anything from religious beliefs to tribal beliefs to just simply living in an area under certain conditions. They become friends, they know each other, they know what is acceptable in the area. They have even passed laws, perhaps, based on behaviour and what they deem to be acceptable behaviour. And that also is the basis for the legal system, of course. That's where we get our laws. Our laws emerge from communities who want certain behaviours punished or stopped and certain behaviours almost rewarded. So we have interdependencies, that's the point. And these can be traced to cultural affinities and to family and social settings. In governmental contexts, the individual is generally forced through laws and persuasion into a relationship with an agency. Sometimes when we have governments in place, then we have to behave in certain ways. And we have to trust that the government is well intentioned and will not abuse its power. But by and large, the government will force us to do certain things. For example, I am forced to pay taxation. I am forced to pay taxes. If I don't pay taxes, I will go to jail. I will be punished. Now, I can't negotiate this one. I can't get out of it. As long as I earn an income, I must pay taxes. That's what the law states. And I'm forced. It's not something that they asked me, would I like to pay taxes? They simply said, if you have this income, you must pay tax. And if you don't pay tax, we will punish you. So we are in different types of relationship all the time. Sometimes the relationships are forceful relationships, as in the case of the government. Sometimes the local community may exert pressure on us, even though there's no law. They simply want us to act in certain ways and behave in certain ways. So if we are bad neighbours and we have all-night parties every weekend, the neighbours will probably let us know. They don't like it and they don't want it. But we also have trust within families and within social settings. And this whole idea of trust then comes all the way through all of these complex relationships, social relationships and the relationship with the government and so on. And trust emerges that what we want is belief that the other person we're dealing with will do what he or she says they will do. In commercial context, the individual is dealing with a business enterprise that has advantages over them in the form of scale, the size of the business, the resources of the business, information, expertise. So when I deal with a company, I'm at a disadvantage to some extent. I'm just me, and I'm dealing with perhaps a large company. The large company, very big, a lot of resources, a lot of employees, a lot of expertise, different departments, a marketing department, a legal department, and so on. The company has a lot of information about itself. It's got all the power. It's got a lot of power. I'm just a consumer. I'm just one person. So there is a big mismatch in power. The only thing I've got, however, in a free society is I've got my ability not to buy their product if I don't like it. But sometimes it may be the case that they're the only producers of the product and I need that product. It could be a medication. I need the medication if I'm going to stay alive. Now they've put the price up, so I must pay the extra price. You could say that's very unfair, but that's the way the cookie crumbles. That's the way the market works. But I also have to trust that big organization, that the medication they're making is reliable. It's going to make sure I'm well and I'm able to continue my life. So I have to trust the organization. When I open the medication and look in, I see some tablets perhaps. I have to trust that the tablets are not just sugar and flour. I have to trust that these are real tablets that are going to do what the label says on the bottle. For companies, the directors and employees make decisions in the best interest of the business, not of the parties it deals with. And that is a slight problem. Companies need to exist. They need to meet the requirements of their stakeholders. So the directors, for example, want good jobs and good salaries and good conditions of work. Shareholders want a profit. They want a return on their investment. The employees want good career prospects and good salaries and good working conditions and so on. So the different stakeholders have different requirements in the business. The consumer, the buyer, is to some extent a stakeholder. They've got an interest in the business. But as I said earlier, they have a very weak position. And therefore, we have to look at businesses as focused inwards to a large extent, trying to get their own procedures running smoothly, efficiently, and so on. But also the purpose of that is to make a profit, to make a bigger profit, to take a bigger share of the market. And when we think like that, the words that are missing here is customer welfare and providing a product that's safe to use, that's innovative, that's useful, that's good value for money. Now these terms almost come secondary in this type of discussion. Trust in the context of business is not grounded in culture. It is what a party has to depend on when no other form of risk reduction is available. So in culture, we do things because we feel that's the right way to do it. That's the way our community wants it. So we're used to living in that community, so we behave in that way, and we trust our neighbours will not rob us, and they trust I won't rob them and steal from them, and so on. In business, trust is what's left after all the risks or many of the risks as possible have been eliminated. So companies set out to try and minimize risk, get rid of the risk. But there'll always be some risk left over. They can't get rid of everything. And the risk that's left over, they have to rely on trust. Trust is what's left. Trust is the only thing that's left after the risk has been reduced. So companies will try to hedge their bets and diversify the market and try to secure their supplies, and they'll take out insurance against injury for their employees, and they will try as much as possible to get rid of the risk. But as I said, there's always some left over, and whatever's left over, the only way that can be dealt with is by trust, is by appealing to the other party, the other people who are involved, to honour their commitments. Situations arise in which a party is effectively compelled to enter into a transaction and rely on the other party. Now, if that's the case, then trust is not important. It's of no great import. It's not important. If we compel people into certain relationships, if a company forces a subcontractor to accept certain terms, they're being forced to accept it. There's no element of trust. That's brute force. They are saying to the subcontractor, you must accept our price and our conditions of delivery for this product and our way of working and so on. You must accept it. If you don't get the contract. So there's no trust involved there. It's all written down. It's all specified. What's required of them is specified, and if they don't do it, they will lose the contract. So when we have force, trust is not required. Situations which both parties have a real choice as to whether or not to conduct the transaction. In these cases, trust is a vital factor in determining whether e-business will take place. So, if we have a choice as to whether or not to conduct the transaction, if we can say yes or no, and we're one side of the agreement, and we can say yes, we accept this, or no, we don't, then trust is important. Do we trust the other person? If I'm going to buy something online, do I trust the people I'm dealing with? I've never met them. I don't know where they are. I don't know which part of the country they're in. They might be in a different country. Do I trust them? Do I trust that they will honour what I want? If I send my cash through a credit card transaction and they cash it off at the other end, if I do that, will I receive these goods? So there's trust required. It's choice. If someone forced me to buy those goods, the police arrived around and forced me, it's a very unlikely scenario, but let's say the police arrived around and forced me to buy these goods and I had to enter my credit card number, then there's no trust involved. I had to do it. It's nothing to do with trust. It's do it or get into trouble. So we have two possibilities here. One, we're compelled to do it, in which case trust is not important. The other one's where we have choice. We have to think, shall we enter into this transaction? Shall we buy something online or not? In which case, if we decide to, we are looking into trust. So trust may be based on several factors. Direct relationship. The origins of trust is in social rather than economic or administrative settings. That's where trust arises. It arises between people believing in each other, believing that they will honour their commitments. That if I say I will do something, then I will do it. You can trust me. I will do it. That's where it rests. So it comes from this idea of social agreement rather than economic or administrative. The most effective forms of trust are based on the relationship of kinship, family and relations within the family, and memberships of the same cultural group. So these are very powerful forms of trust. So you trust your parents, you trust your brothers and sisters, you trust your cousins or whoever. And you may trust them more than someone you've got as a friend, because friends can come and go, but your family, they stick around. So some kinds of formalized relationship can involve trust, even where the context is not social. So there can be formalized relationships that are based on trust, even where it's not social. The example I just given about the internet, if I decide to buy something on the internet, I don't know who I'm dealing with. I don't know the company. I don't know the people. I don't know which country they're in. It doesn't really matter to me. I read their terms and conditions of delivery. I'll read up about their price. I read some reviews of the article of the products that I'm interested in, and then I decide. And once I've decided, it's sort of a formalized relationship, and it's based on trust. And it's not social. I don't know these people. So we can have some sort of formalized relationships that involve trust. However, in terms of the literature, a key example is what's known as the principal-agent relationship, which is that entered into with a broker or an accountant or a solicitor or some other outsourced producer of goods and services. That's a good example also of formalized trust, formalized relationships generating trust that are not family or not social. If I go to see an accountant to get my accounts done for tax purposes, let's say, I don't know the accountant so much. I trust the accountant is competent. I look at their credentials, I look at their qualifications and their experience and their reputation, but I don't know them. So I don't have any social contact with them. This is a business type relationship. When I go to the bank, I deal with people in the bank. I trust that they are experts in what they're saying, and I trust that they are not going to cheat me or lie to me. I trust. Now, this is not based on family or social. This is more formalized. But again, it involves trust. Of course, in the case of the principal agent, the agent is bound in law to act on the principal's behalf. If the accountant gives me bad advice, then that's going against the ethos. If they're deliberately lying to me, that's illegal. But in some countries it may not be illegal, but it's certainly unethical, and it breaks the trust relationship. If I find out they've been lying to me, I don't trust them anymore. I don't trust that organization. If I go to the bank and they don't give me accurate information, I don't trust the bank in that case. They give me the wrong information. Another such relationship is a contract, whereby the terms of the relationship are defined and contingencies addressed. We can have trust in each other. That's when we simply believe that the other person will honor what they said they were going to do. But sometimes we can draw up contracts to try and make sure that this happens. So it's not based on trust. It could be based on the law. We have a contract, and under the law of contract we have consideration and we have intent, and we have the various requirements that a contract will come into place. We intend the contract to exist. And when all of the conditions for a contract are met, then the outcome will be fixed in law. In other words, the parties to the contract will honour their commitments. And if they don't, they will be in breach of contract. So there's nothing to do with trust here. This is, in a sense, replacing trust. This is using the law to make sure that both parties to the contract honour their sides. There is a contract. The parties consciously provide undertakings to one another to perform specific acts and thereby gain legally recognised rights and responsibilities. So with a contract, we don't need trust. We just need to get the contract into place, and if the other party then does not act honourably or does not deliver what he or she said they would deliver, if there's a violation of the contract, a breach of contract, then it can go to court and redress can be sought. An effective approach to generating trust is a relationship based on multiple prior and successful transactions resulting in mutual loyalty between the parties. A proxy for a prior transaction is a trial transaction or a demonstration. So we get trust sometimes by having dealt with the person before. And the more we deal with that company or that person, the more we get to know about them. And if we have good experiences, then we trust the person. So trust is built up over time. We don't actually have to buy off them. Sometimes we can just look at the product and see a demonstration of it and perhaps have the product for a trial period. If we're going to buy a car, they might trust us and lend us the car for a weekend so we can try it out. And we can make a decision. That's a proxy. So the trust can be built up over time. Prior exposure in the form of vicarious experience, having watched someone else conduct a transaction, that also can give us trust. If we trust, let's say back to the car example, we trust a particular manufacturer of car. Why do we trust it? Well, because our neighbour has got that car and the neighbour's been driving the car for many years and it's never broken down, and we trust it vicariously because we have seen someone else using the product. So therefore we build up trust in the product. When we see a lot of a particular product around, we think a lot of customers have bought it, therefore it must be good quality, we'll buy it as well. It's vicarious experience. So we build up trust by dealing with a producer, dealing with another party. We build up trust from the experience we built up over the years perhaps, and we trust on that basis. It could be we have it for a trial period, so we get to test it, or we see it being used and we start to trust it. Or it could be we have vicarious experience because we've watched somebody else using it and they have had a good experience. Referred trust. Trust may arise as a result of reference being provided by someone else. Sometimes we trust because someone else said, look, it's a good product and we can endorse it. It could be a member of your family who says, I just bought one of these and it's really good, it's a good product. They're endorsing it, they're given a reference for it. So it could be referred trust. Now, this involves transitivity of trust. For example, if I trust a party, do I therefore trust a further party that they recommend? So there has to be transitivity. If my neighbour says, I trust this company, should I trust the company as well? Well, if I do trust the company on that recommendation, that means I trust my neighbour. So there is transitivity. If someone tells me that a product is good, then I have to trust the person who's telling me, as well as trusting the company that makes the product. So there is transitivity in trust. Basically, a basic form, I should say, of referred trust is word of mouth. When people tell each other, word gets around. This product is really good. It's worth buying. This product will change your life. It's very good value for money. That's word of mouth. People tell each other. But then you have to, transitivity, you have to believe the person who's telling you. You have to believe that they know what they're saying and they have expertise in what they're saying. The idea of reputation is a generalized form of word of mouth referred trust. So reputation is based on what people have said, word of mouth. But then you have to believe the people who are saying it. So as I said, there's transitivity. You have to believe that the product is good. You have to believe that the company is good because, is good in itself. And then you have to believe the people who said the company is good for referred trust to work. So references are based on that. If a tutor gives a reference to a student, then the tutor's reputation is also subject to scrutiny. Because after all, anyone can give a reference, but it has to be a person who is in a position to give a reference and who can be trusted that what they say is accurate and true. It could be word of mouth is based on direct contact, or it could be through some sort of social network. It could be online. It could be on Twitter or Facebook or on certain websites or whatever. Or it could be direct contact. People meet each other and recommend certain products. An institutional form of reputation is accreditation. Accreditation is when the company, if it's a company selling a product, the company tries to get some award. It gets an award in its procedures and it gets its quality endorsed by some accrediting agency. And this accrediting agency is well recognized, it's honourable, it's perhaps been set up by government, it's a desirable accreditation. It's where parties rely on some trusted organisation, for example, a licensing or registration board, to permit registration or grant licenses to parties that satisfy a set of conditions. So what we've got here is companies trying to be accredited in terms of their quality procedures. They're saying, trust us, trust our product, trust our company, because look, we have been accredited, we have been tested, we have been people have inquired into our procedures, into our standards, and they believe we have good quality. So we are now saying to you as a customer, buy our product because this institution, this accrediting board has said we are good. Now, of course, transitivity kicks in here again. In terms of a consumer, we have to look at the accrediting board and say, is that reputable? Is the accrediting institution reputable? If it is, and they approve the company, it's like getting a reference from a good person, from a person who's well respected in his or her area. The accrediting agency are recommending the product and we trust the accrediting agency, but it's transitive, as I said earlier. The licensing authority should perform regular audits to check adherence to required standards. It's important that the accrediting agency make regular visits to, let's say, companies to make sure that their products are of the right standard and that their procedures meet their requirements so that their accreditation may be continued. that's all we're going to deal with in this topic. We have looked in depth at the idea of trust, the origins of trust, how trust comes about, and how we use trust to try and generate more sales. Because it's only when the two parties on either side of the deal, when the two parties trust each other, that something will happen, that the deal will go through, that the transaction will go through. And in terms of e-business, that is essential. It's important in terms of e-business that the person doing the buying trusts the person or the company or the institution they're buying from online. If there is no trust, then the transaction will fail. So it's a crucially important concept. Well, that's all I'm going to deal with here, so I'm going to leave it at that and say thank you for watching.